Hydra the Revenge is Dorney Park's B&M Floorless coaster. And prior to Iron Menace, it was the last original coaster that Dorney Park built. And it opened in 2005, so it's been quite a few years. It actually opened as a replacement for their Hercules Wind roller coaster, which closed in 2003. It's located in a perfect position from the park that after you pass through your front entrance and walk down the midway, the whole ride is just laid out in front of you. I love the colors and just overall presentation of this thing. I remember when I was a kid being a young enthusiast looking up all these different roller coasters around the world and seeing pictures of Hydra the Revenge and thinking, wow, that looks so cool. That's such a crazy looking ride. Because the profiling of some of these elements is just very bizarre. This is easily the weirdest floorless coaster that B&M ever built. It's visually stunning. You'll want to take a bunch of pictures of this thing. It's not a themed experience or anything, but it does have a really nice sign out front. The pink restraints on the green track really makes it pop. And then when you actually climb on board, we have a pretty interesting ride experience. Hydra the Revenge starts off with none other than the world's first JoJo roll. This is an element name that supposedly came about from someone at Dorney Park back when this ride was getting built. They named this element after him and it's stuck. We've seen JoJo rolls all around the world, including at Copperhead Strike down at Carowinds. It's basically a heartline roll that you just slowly traverse through after departing the station before you start up the lift hill. So this is inversion number 1. And I'd say it's the element that this ride is most famous for. For a while, it was the only JoJo roll in the world, but ironically, it's the element that I always forget this ride has. Like when you sit on these floorless coasters, you're just so used to departing the station, taking a turn to start up the lift, and when you're sitting in the back, your view of the JoJo roll is hidden, and so then you just start rotating, it's like, oh yeah, right, forgot about this part. But when you sit up front, I mean, it's kind of hard to miss. It is very cool looking. Now, Hydra the Revenge is one of B&M's shorter floorless coasters. It's less than 100 feet tall. As you climb up to the top, you're also going to notice that there is no pre-drop. So many B&M floorless coasters do a little dip and then swoop to the side. Hydra the Revenge just sends you straight over into a drop. So as a result, it happens kind of suddenly. When you're in the back, you definitely get pulled over. And due to the terrain, Hydra the Revenge features a bigger drop than its height. You gain an extra 10 feet, so you descend 105 feet down to the ground below, and you have this whole back portion of the ride that you can't really see from the main pathways. This whole section of property sits at a lower elevation than the rest of the park, so you'll see that many of these elements are raised up quite a bit. It's actually pretty cool. Straight away after the drop, the first big moment that you pass through is up for debate whether it's an inversion or not. I personally do not think that it feels like an inversion, but I know RCDB lists Hydra as having 7 inversions. I personally say it has 6. I didn't feel like you actually went upside down here, so comment below whether you count this as an inversion or not. You emerge out of this turn and get thrown towards the ground. It's probably around here that you'll notice that Hydra the Revenge is not the smoothest experience. This is actually a relatively shaky roller coaster, like to the point where it's noticeable and kind of bothersome. For that reason, when you ride this, I would recommend that you keep your head forward as opposed to your head back. That way, there's less odds that you'll bang your head up against the restraint. And the closer you sit to the front, I also think the smoother it is. So while you might get the best airtime on the first drop in the back, probably also going to be shakier. Now, next up, you have a 0G roll. It's going to rotate you around to the left-hand side, and immediately after, you enter a corkscrew throwing you the opposite direction to the right. There are 2 great back-to-back elements, and that's what sends you into the weirdest Cobra roll ever. The lowest level entry and exit track here is smushed together, so it's a lot closer than normal. So when it comes time to make that actual cobra head shape, it flares out to the side, so you start turning left before rotating over to the right, and then you level out, flip over to the left, and then bank closer up to the ground to exit. It is definitely bizarre. I would go as far as saying that the second half of that cobra roll barely even feels like an inversion at all. More just like a high banking turn sending you towards the ground. But the weird doesn't stop there. As you rise up to pass over this JoJo roll, you're banking slightly to the left and then you get thrown to the right. It's like an actually kind of snappy moment. It's something that doesn't really exist on these other inversions. Hydra isn't known for its snappiness. When the train travels along the track, it almost feels like it's going in slow motion. Like if it went at a quicker pace, it'd be snappier. But this one turn is a slight exception. But after that, you have this gradual ramp up into an airtime hill. Definitely Hydra's first moment of dead space. It seemed like they want to include this drop to send you up into a corkscrew, but they had to push the element further back, and so they just have this gradual rise up into it. It's just very bizarre. But dropping off of this hill in the back row is fun. You got one more inversion, a left-handed corkscrew, and then a very smooth transition into this bank turn, and then you end things out with one final long drawn-out bank turn into the brake run. Definitely a bit of a lackluster finale, that's for sure. But I appreciate Hydra for its weirdness. I just wish that it had more of a punch. That's where Hydra loses me. Like most B&M floorless coasters are formulaic. Like after the drop, you have a vertical loop and then maybe an implement or dive loop. And those three elements that I named just now don't exist on this ride at all. I think that's neat, but so many of these like older B&M floorless coasters are just so intense, and Hydra is not. When I get off this ride, I find myself saying, it's alright. Maybe I'd ride it again, but more than likely I'm going to move on to whatever ride is coming up next. In my lineup of Dorney Park roller coasters, I'm not even entirely sure I'd put this in the top 3. I for sure like Steel Force and Talon better than this. It's about whether this is better than Possessed for me. I'd have to think about it. So for Hydra the Revenge's final score, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. I think it's a fine ride experience. It's not uncomfortable. Again, I do wish it were smoother. Like, it's a good supporting ride here at Dorney Park. It's not one that I'm gonna like drive out of the way to go experience. I can definitely think of other B&Ms that I like more than this, but for what it is, it's not bad. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of Hydra the Revenge at Dorney Park. If you agree with the points that I brought up, if you think there's anything I missed, be sure to post that down below, and stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.